In 1947, Niels Bohr, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, was knighted and told to design his own coat of arms. He didn't choose a lion or a sword. He chose the emblem of an idea more than 2,000 years old, yin and yang, the familiar diagram. Two swirling halves, each holding a seed of the other. Came much later, but the idea it carries is ancient. Underneath it, in Latin, he wrote 4 words: opposites are complementary. For years, the internet has told one story about that shield. That Bohr took his greatest idea from ancient Eastern wisdom. That the old sages understood quantum physics first. That story is wrong. What actually happened is stranger, because Bohr wasn't the first to arrive at this idea. Not by a long way. A Greek, 25 centuries ago, said it about a bow and a lyre. A Chinese text, from the other side of the world, built a whole philosophy on it. Hindu sculptors carved it into temple stone, and a German cardinal wrote it into the nature of the infinite. 4 traditions, 1 recurring pattern. That reality is not made of things that simply oppose each other, that opposites need each other, and you cannot describe the whole with only one half. Here's what almost every version of this story online gets wrong, and why the truth is better. Bohr did not learn this from any of them. His physics came first, from inside the atom, on its own terms. And then resemblance was only noticed afterward. This is the story of one strange pattern, arrived at 4 separate times across the centuries. And then a 5th time, last of all, deep inside the atom, where a complete description of reality genuinely requires holding 2 opposites together at once. Start with the physics, because it's the part that can actually be tested. In 1927, at a conference in Como, Italy, Bohr introduced an idea he called complementarity. It came out of a problem that had tormented physicists for 2 decades. Light and matter refused to behave like one consistent kind of thing. Sometimes an electron behaved like a particle, a tiny locatable speck. Sometimes it behaved like a wave spread out, rippling, interfering with itself. Not one and then the other, because it was changing. Both descriptions were true. Neither one, on its own, was complete. The cleanest place to see this is the double-slit experiment. Fire particles, one at a time, at a barrier with 2 openings. Common sense says each one goes through a single slit and lands in one of 2 clumps. That is not what happens. Over thousands of particles, a striped pattern builds up on the far wall. Bright bands and dark bands, the unmistakable signature of waves overlapping. And here is the careful way to say why. The only mathematics that correctly predicts that pattern treats each particle as if it traveled through both slits at once, like a wave, not a thing we watch it do, a thing the equations demand. So you do the obvious thing. You place a detector at the slits to catch which one each particle actually goes through. And the moment you do, the moment you extract reliable information that genuinely tells the 2 paths apart, the striped pattern vanishes. The particles fall into 2 plain clumps, like specks after all. This is the heart of complementarity. The wave picture and the particle picture are both necessary to describe what an electron is, but they are mutually exclusive. No single experimental arrangement will show you both at once. And notice, this isn't about who is watching. There is no conscious mind required, no mystical observer. It's about how the experiment is built. The arrangement you choose decides which face nature shows you, wave or particle. And no arrangement you can build will ever show both faces together. Bohr's claim was not that the electron is really a particle or really a wave, and we simply can't tell. His claim was sharper, that neither half is the whole truth, and a complete account of reality requires holding both mutually exclusive descriptions together even though you can never occupy both at the same instant. One honest boundary before we go on, because this is exactly where the popular versions go off the rails. Complementarity is a precise, technical statement about quantum systems and the experiments we run on them. It is not a slogan about balance in life. It does not say your work and your family are complementary, or that good needs evil. Bohr would have winced at all of that. But hold on to the pattern of it. A complete description that needs two opposed halves, neither one enough alone. Because that pattern, not the physics, the pattern, is the thing that keeps reappearing. Long before any of this, no equipment, no electrons, just people looking hard at the world and refusing an easy answer. Begin in China with the symbol Bohr eventually chose. Look at the yin and yang properly, and the first thing you notice is that it is not a picture of two enemies. The dark half flows into the light. Each side carries a small seed of its opposite at its very center. Neither exists cleanly without the other. The Tao Te Ching, the foundational Taoist text, expresses the idea in its second chapter. When people recognize beauty as beauty, it says, ugliness is already there. High and low, before and after, being and non-being. Each one gives rise to the other. You cannot have a front without a back. The opposites are not two separate things that happen to sit near each other. They call each other into being. Now cross the world and go back roughly 25 centuries to a Greek named Heraclitus. Circling the same pattern in sharper, darker language, almost nothing he wrote survives whole, just fragments, quoted by later writers. But the fragments are relentless on one theme. The road up and the road down, he said, are one and the same road. It depends only on where you're walking. And then his most famous image. A single object you can picture in your hand, the bow and the lyre. Both only work because of tension. A string pulling hard against a frame that pulls hard back. Release the tension, end the opposition, and the bow is just a bent stick. The lyre falls silent. The thing holds together, Heraclitus said, precisely because it is being pulled apart. He called it a harmony that turns back on itself. He is not saying the opposition is an illusion. He is saying the opposition is the structure. Take it away, and the whole thing collapses. Travel to India, and the same refusal is carved into stone. There is a form of the divine called Ardhanarishvara, the Lord who is half woman. One body, split precisely down the middle. One side the god Shiva, the other the goddess Shakti. Consciousness on one side, energy on the other, fused into a single figure you can still stand in front of today. In the Shiva reading of that image, the point is not two deities standing politely side by side. It is that they cannot be separated without destroying what they are. Consciousness with no energy does nothing. Energy with no consciousness has no direction. The sculpture insists. The whole is the union. Split it, and you are left with two halves that were never meant to stand alone. Every example so far comes from the ancient world, but the pattern didn't stop there. Jump forward more than 1,000 years to 15th century Germany and a cardinal named Nicholas of Cusa. In 1440, in a book called Unlearned Ignorance, Cusa took the idea to its breaking point. Picture a circle, he suggested, and start making it bigger. The bigger it grows, the flatter its edge becomes. Push that to the infinite. A circle infinitely large, and its curved edge becomes a straight line. The two opposites, curve and straight, coincide. That was his claim about everything. In the ordinary, finite world, opposites stay apart. Maximum is not minimum. The largest is not the smallest. But in the infinite, Cusa argued, those opposites coincide. Because the very line between them is a feature of finite, limited thinking. Push far enough, and the opposites you were so sure of fold into one. 4 traditions: a Chinese symbol, a Greek fragment, an Indian sculpture, a Christian treatise. There is no clear evidence that any of them shaped the others. And all four refuse the same comfortable assumption that opposites are simply separate, that you can take one and leave the other, that half the picture could ever be the whole. Which brings us back to Bohr, and to the correction this whole story is really about. Remember the story we started with, the viral version, where Bohr studied Eastern wisdom, discovered the Taoists had understood complementarity thousands of years early, and stamped the yin and yang on his shield to honor the debt. Ancient wisdom, vindicated by modern science. It's a lovely story. The dates alone break it. Bohr introduced complementarity in 1927. He designed that coat of arms in 1947. 20 years later, the physics did not come from the symbol. The physics came first, out of the double slit, and the equations, and the fierce arguments with Einstein. The symbol was chosen 2 decades after the fact as a fitting emblem for an idea Bohr already held. And by the account of Bohr's own biographer, the physicist Abraham Pais, who worked alongside him, the yin and yang wasn't dug out of any deep study of Taoism, because there wasn't one. It was suggested to Bohr for the crest by the wife of one of his co-workers, a woman Pais describes as a historian of China. Pais judged the whole belief that Oriental philosophy shaped Bohr's physics to be, in his word, unfounded. In honesty, it isn't perfectly settled. At least one scholar, Robert Allinson, has argued the influence was real and deeper than Pais allowed. It's a genuine dispute, and this channel isn't going to pretend it's closed, but the chronology is stubborn, and the man who knew Bohr best came down firmly on one side. Here is why the honest version is the better one. Better than the myth, not just more accurate. If Bohr simply copied an old symbol, this is a small story, one clever man borrowing a nice picture. But if he didn't, if his physics genuinely walked into this pattern on its own, from inside the atom, with no help from the Tao, then something far stranger is true. Then 4 traditions and 1 physicist across 25 centuries with utterly different tools kept arriving at the same place. And the physicist, arriving last and by the hardest road, looked up and recognized where he was. But we have to be careful here, at the end, in exactly the way the overclaim channels are not. These are not the same claim. Heraclitus and the Taoists and Cusa were making sweeping statements about the whole of reality. Life, death, meaning, the divine. Complementarity is a narrow, exact, experimentally tested statement about quantum systems. Bohr did not prove the Tao. The Tao did not predict the double slit. What they share is not a content. It is a pattern. And the pattern is this: the refusal to believe that the whole truth can ever be held in one half. You can feel the pull of it without any physics at all. Think of someone you know mostly from one side. Only their gentleness, or only their temper, only their public face, or only their private one. You would say, honestly, that you don't really know them yet. Not until you can hold the other half together with the first, and let neither one cancel the other. That isn't proof of anything Bohr found. It's a small, human echo of the same pattern that 4 traditions and 1 experiment kept insisting on. That some things are only whole when you refuse to choose between their halves. Nothing here is finished. Physicists still argue about what complementarity really means. Whether it's a deep truth about nature or a feature of how we're forced to ask our questions, the traditions disagree sharply among themselves about what their own symbols mean. Nobody solved anything by laying these investigations side by side. What's actually here is smaller and more honest. One strange pattern, found separately by people who never met, and one place, deep in the physics of the very small, where nature still seems to insist on it. A physicist put an ancient symbol on his shield, not because the old sages taught him his physics, but because he had walked alone, all the way to a door they had each found first. And he recognized it when he arrived. Ancient wisdom, quantum mystery, direct knowing,